From beautiful Phoenix, Arizona, it is the Neglected News Report. I'm your co-host, Scott Mitchell, along here with my brother, Kevin.
Good afternoon. There's the sound file again.
You know what? I don't think it's the file. I think it's the hard drive. Because it doesn't always stop in the same place.
But if you go back in time, we say this every episode.
Yeah, I know. Let's just forget it saying it then. Anyway, it's another beautiful day in the neighborhood here in Phoenix. Very, very nice, comfortable temperatures. It's supposed to get up to about 85 or so, maybe.
The other day was actually chilly in the morning.
There were 2 days this week, like Wednesday and Thursday.
Wind
chilly
really
and
blowing.
windy.
It was in the 50s, which to you back east isn't cold, but this time of year, that's cold for Phoenix.
Yeah, it's chilly. It was 2 days in a row. It was like that.
Many years we were already in the hundreds, and we were in the we were in the 70s mostly.
Oh, I can remember. My birthday is a week from Tuesday, April 28th. I don't know how many times I've spent my birthday with triple digits over the years. And I've lived in Phoenix for 43 years.
You know, if we can stay under 100 degrees into May, it's a pretty good thing.
But we don't know what to expect after that.
Yeah.
Was it 2 years ago? Was a relatively mild summer?
This last year was a mild summer. We had that
last year.
We had that one storm that knocked over a bunch of light posts.
We had a lot of rain last summer too, which for us a lot of rain is just a drop in the bucket for you guys, but for us it was a lot of rain.
So this week, Hillary Clinton tried to convince America that she's just like the rest of us.
Uh-huh.
Yep.
I still can't look at her wearing those sunglasses without thinking Harry Reid. She looks like Harry Reid with those sunglasses on.
Less the bruises.
Minus the bruises. Hey, we don't know for a fact that she didn't give them to Harry. He might have got into a tangle with her.
Harry Reid. So what's the deal with Harry Reid? We find out that his brother beat him up, right?
This is what they're saying, and
that he didn't fall on exercise equipment.
There's circumstantial evidence pointing to it that his brother may have beat him up.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall there, man. That would have been. I mean, people don't come more despicable than Harry Reid, and that's not because that's a partisan statement. Just the things he does is just despicable.
I don't get that about brothers fighting because I don't think Kevin and I ever got into a real fight when we were growing up.
Oh, we'd punch each other, but not in the face.
Well, you hit me with a souvenir wooden sword one time in the kneecap. That didn't exactly feel good.
Yeah. Well, it's not as bad as our friend Carl, whose brother waited for him to go to sleep, and he hit him over the head with a bongo drum.
Brian did that? Yes. Carl was supposed to be here. We're expecting him to be here.
We're going to actually have a guest today, but
maybe.
So anyway, getting back to Hillary, she and Huma Weiner. That's what's her real name?
Huma
Abedin, which is Weiner. She's married to Weiner.
Former Congressman Anthony Weiner of New York. Weiner.
So they were they had a photo up at Chipotle,
a.k.a. Carlos Danger.
Yes, we were supposed to believe that they were just wandered into Chipotle and that there was just a camera there. There was just a camera there waiting, just kind of matter of factly took a picture of him. Well, they ate their lunch and I guess the big thing is they didn't tip, but I don't tip it fast.
It was part of their listening tour. They were just sitting there to listen to people.
Stupid listening tour. And then that's another example of Hillary trying to act like the rest of us, like she does that every day. Now, I understand because of fame and so forth, you can't go out and do things like that. But she also does have a sense of entitlement, too, so I just don't buy the whole
then
I'm part of one of you guys.
Then after that, they had the meeting at the coffee house with everyday Iowans. The everyday Iowans happened to have been handpicked, brought in by limousine, vetted beforehand, and asked to give up all their electronic devices during the interview, cameras, cell phones, recorders, whatever. Each one of them were involved in the Democratic Party. One of them was a chauffeur for who was it? For Joe Biden. Another one was a member of Planned Parenthood in Iowa, and another one was a contributor or something.
See, why do you think a lot of Americans are just tuning out to politics? Because it's not real. It's fake. It's a show put on. It's just like any Broadway play. It's produced. It's controlled. It's not real.
It's one thing. Okay, You might say that, and I don't know, you don't particularly like this guy, but you might say that Marco Rubio was guilty of the same thing by announcing his candidacy in front of his hometown crowd. But it's one thing to be in the midst of an organic hometown crowd that happened organically. Mm-hmm. Difference between that and actually staging it. Big difference.
Yeah, and what is it about the state of New York? You had Bobby Kennedy from Massachusetts became a senator from the state of New York, and then you got Hillary Clinton from Chicago, and Arkansas or whatever, becomes a senator from New York. Why do New Yorkers allow that? Carpetbaggers.
I don't know. I'd take Bobby Kennedy over Hillary Clinton any day.
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, what is it about the state of New York? I mean, why? Can't you guys produce your own senators? I mean, Chuck U. Schumer, he's one, but so back to Hillary. So then she was seen flying coach and pulling her own luggage behind her. Come on, are we really supposed to believe that?
Here's the thing it's a tiny thing. It doesn't mean anything. That bugs me though is the fact they're calling that her SUV Scooby. Excuse me, in Scooby-Doo, the SUV or van was called the Mystery Machine. I know it's stupid, but it just bugs me. I don't know why. They're trying to be hip.
Yeah, and do you remember back, over 20 years ago when George Herbert Walker Bush had a photo op inside of a grocery store, and he didn't know what the scanning machine was. And the media made a big deal out of the fact that, look how far removed he is from the everyday American. He can't possibly relate to the typical American. The difference back then, the media was pointing that out. Now they're complicit with Hillary trying to act like that. They're like, they're part of the whole production.
And you know what? You got to give her husband credit for one thing, though. If he was running, and he proved it when he was running, he wouldn't stage anything. He'd go right into a McDonald's. He'd go right into a coffee shop.
Well, Bill is vastly more charming than Hillary.
Yeah,
I mean,
totally.
You would want to have a beer, sit down and have a beer.
Yeah,
with
you'd disagree with everything he'd have to say, but you'd want to have a beer with him.
And he'd charm you the whole way.
Yeah.
Whereas Hillary, she'd cackle you. She'd cackle right in your face like a witch.
Well, heck,
is that unfair?
No. I wouldn't even mind having a beer with W.
So I was talking to Scott earlier today. I listen. I listen to Beck in the morning. I've got.
I do a little bit, but not much.
And I've been tuning them out lately because all they're talking about is this stupid political race, which we're doing right now, by the way. But we're doing it more to make fun of it. Actually,
can't get away from it though.
So I'm just. In the end, I'm so skeptical. I'm so jaded at this point in my life. I'm sorry, but in the end, it's going to be a Bush or it's going to be a Clinton. I don't care. You got Ted Cruz, who I love. I love Rand Paul.
Yep.
I would love to see one of those guys get elected. Ain't happening. First of all, they don't have enough money, and the powers that be just won't abide.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not happening.
Nope.
So, I was listening to a guy. An economist. His name is Dr. Paul Craig Roberts. He was an advisor to President Reagan, along with David Stockman. He was David Stockman's right hand man, who was his economic advisor. He created. It was part of the supply side theory. Back when it first took off. Back then, everyone thought demand drove everything and so forth. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But anyway, he was talking. I was listening to him the other day, and this used to be a mainstream guy. He's like, you know what? He says these elections mean nothing anymore. They mean absolutely nothing because if you think you really have say into who gets elected, you're kidding yourself. Mm-hmm. They're already pre-chosen. The money that's filtered in is so big that anybody who could contend with them philosophically can't do it monetarily.
I would have to say, I might be going on a limb by saying this, the last freely chosen president was probably Ronald Reagan.
The last, hard
to
know.
I think an argument can be said.
I would say Kennedy.
I think there could be an argument in favor of Reagan, though.
I think I think they got rid of Kennedy personally. I
Yeah.
I buy into that
'Cause
conspiracy.
He didn't do what they wanted him to. He wasn't.
No.
The dog got off the leash.
No, he was.
Basically.
Yeah, that's exactly right. But we've spoken about that before.
Yeah.
But my friend has a funny saying. He says, "If voting was so important, they wouldn't let us do it." and you know what? I believe that.
Yeah. Who says it?
Dave Burkhart. Oh, I shouldn't have said his name, but
Not bad for a lefty.
no, he's a lefty. But he always says,
You should
voting
use
was
his,
so important, they wouldn't let us do it.
Should use his nickname.
Hockey.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we were privy to all that fake. I don't know that production to make Hillary look
I
like
just thought of something.
she was one of us. And if she was one of us, who can afford to buy their daughter a $10 million condo in Manhattan?
Here's another way to look at it too. Once Jeb Bush declares formally, you're going to see some of the same things with him, stage stuff like that, and all that kind of stuff. The ones who are genuine candidates, you're not going to see it.
No, because they don't have the pockets. These are productions. They've got hundreds and hundreds of handlers that these people deal with.
That's why Rand Paul and Ted Cruz won't get the nomination. That's why they're having to do things the right way, the old-fashioned way.
And they're going to be eaten as much from the Republican Party as from the Democrats.
Yep. They eat their own.
They, as a matter of fact, if you were to ask Jeb Bush who he would rather see as president, would he rather see a Rand Paul or a Ted Cruz or Hillary Clinton? If he was being honest with you, he would say a Hillary Clinton. Mm-hmm. And mark my word, that if I will eat my hat if the day after the 2016 elections are held that it's not a Bush or it's not a Clinton. I'm sorry.
Even if one of them doesn't get the nomination.
I don't know. There was this one lefty. I can't remember his name. Journalist who said, "Now they're always conspiring, lefties. They're always there." He was talking about if Hillary becomes president, who she should nominate for her vice president. You know what he said?
You told me this and I don't remember.
Barack Hussein Obama.
He couldn't.
No. I was listening to Mark Levin the other day. So, he could become vice president.
He could only serve for 2 years if he had to take over the office.
That's what I'm saying. He could serve a total of 10.
Right.
And this guy's point was, if Hillary, something were to happen to Hillary, we'd have Obama for another 2 years. They're always conspiring.
Yep. Bill.
I'm surprised they. What's the amendment that put the limit on the number of years that someone could serve?
24th or 25th? 25th is the one where they can be removed if they're judged to be unable to fulfill the office. I don't remember now.
I don't know, but I
24th, I think.
I think if some of them had their way, they would get rid of that amendment.
Yeah, of course they would. But it's just, it's kind of hard to watch what's going on. It really is.
Well, we got something a little different to talk about today. Why don't you start it off?
Read this posting on Facebook. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I don't know the validity of it. I don't know how much of it's true, if any. But it's plausible enough to be true.
Well, I'm going to give you some secondary information after Scott talks that kind of corroborates a lot of it.
Okay, there was a posting on Facebook. It was basically a letter that was written to a rap magazine, the name of which eludes me right now.
Rap Music.
Rap magazine. Yeah, it was Rap Music magazine. This guy that wrote the letter allegedly was a big name in the record industry back 30 years ago or so. And around 1990-91, he was invited to a meeting of other top people in the recording industry. And we're talking about not talent, we're talking about management, executives, that kind of stuff. Now, there are about 30 of them there, and then there was a small group of people that no one knew that were kind of rough looking, basically, that no one knew. And before the meeting began, they were asked, if they wanted to stay for the meeting, they were asked to fill out and sign a non-disclosure agreement to where they weren't allowed to disclose what transpired in this meeting ever. Now, this guy signed it, and a few people left before the meeting even began. They refused to sign the non-disclosure. And basically what it amounted to was this. One of the people who was part of the group of people that no one knew got up and started speaking. And he brought forth information that basically in a nutshell was that there were a lot of executives and owners of record companies, people in the recording industry that they worked for that had interests, some of which were controlling interests, in private prisons. Okay? And that in order for them to maximize the profit, they had to have people in the prisons. In order to have people in the prisons, they had to have crimes committed. And what better way to have people commit crimes and condition them to have a state of mind to where they would be influenced or to where they would be conducive to committing crimes was to promote a type of music that promoted these bad behaviors. In other words, gangster rap. And some of the people were just like, you've got to be kidding. Some people walked out after this. This guy was going to walk out, but he says, I got to hear the rest of this. And he did. He listened to it, and he said, for the last 25 years or so, I've been afraid to say anything because of the non-disclosure. And it wasn't just because of the non-disclosure. He actually feared for his life and the lives of those around him. But after 25 years, he had come from Europe to America. He went back to Europe, and he just couldn't stand it anymore because of the burden he was carrying to keep this secret over these years. So that's why he wrote the letter to this rap magazine. And that pretty much in a nutshell is what he said in the article.
Well, it's just another example, if this is true, of people or forces, whatever you want to call them, principalities, that shape, nudge, push us in a direction where we might not normally go.
Because I'll tell you, folks, I defy anyone to come up with anything redeeming about gangster rap.
Nothing.
Can you find any redeeming social value in it?
Oh, yes. Underwear hanging out of lowriders.
Yeah, okay.
What do you...
You know what that means, folks?
Pull up your pants.
What that means is it's prison. It's code in prison. If you have your pants down below your underwear, it means that you're open to certain things.
Again, there's those out there say that that's an urban legend as well. So it's really hard. It's really hard to know.
It's an invitation for sex in prison.
I've never been in prison, so I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to give you guys some statistics that actually back what Scott said. That back Scott up. First of all, this is off Wikipedia. Now, and Wikipedia is not the only one to say this. I could go to a million other sites and they say the same thing. It said it's in October of 2013. The incarceration rate of the United States of America was the highest in the world at 716 people per 100,000 of the national population. While the United States represents about 4.4% of the world's population, it houses around 22% of the world's prisoners. Imprisonment of America's 2.3 million prisoners, costing $24,000 per inmate per year, and $5.1 billion in new prison construction, consumes $60.3 billion in budget expenditures. As of 2014, the high incarceration rates have started to modestly decline, although still remain the highest in the world. So it breaks... It goes on. This is New York Times. This next article is from the New York Times. So, I mean, lefties of lefties. The United States has less than 5% of the world's population, but it has almost a quarter of the world's prisoners. Think about that. Okay. Indeed, the United States leads the world in producing prisoners, a reflection of a relatively recent, what did Scott say, a little bit over 20 years ago, and now entirely distinctive American approach to crime and punishment. Americans are locked up for crimes from writing bad checks to using drugs. that would rarely produce prison sentences in other countries. And in particular, they are kept incarcerated far longer than prisoners in other nations. It just backs up that whole idea that, this is all astroturf. And I'm gonna get into those firms that make their living out of, the private prisons that make their living out of having prisoners in their cells. Is that going to stop raining anytime soon?
I hope so.
Okay. The criminologists and legal scholars in other industrialized nations say they are mystified and appalled by the number and length of American prison sentences. The United States has, for instance, 2.3 million criminals behind bars, more than any other nation, according to... Okay, blah, blah, blah. I've already said that. Now, this is the interesting part. China. This is China, okay? We're talking about China who summarily executes people for nothing. China, which is 4 times more populous than the United States, is a distant second with 1.6 million people in prison. And they've got over 1 billion people, so they're only 1.6 million. We got 300,000 people, 300 million people, and we're at 2.3 million. So, and they've got 1.6 million people, and that number excludes hundreds of thousands of people held in administrative detention, most of them in China's extrajudicial system of re-education through labor, which often singles out political activists who have not committed crimes. San Marino, with a population of 30, ends the list of 218 countries. They have 1 single prisoner.
And it's probably the town drunk.
And we have 751 people per 100,000 people. It's almost 10%. 10%. Well, 1%. 751 people out of 100,000.
Oh, I thought you said out of 1,000. Sorry.
Yeah, 100,000. The only other major industrialized nation that even comes close is Russia, with 627 prisoners for every 100,000. The others have much lower rates. England's rate is 151, Germany's is 88, and Japan's is 63. And the median along all nations is about 125 people per 100,000, which is roughly 1/8 of what the United States
Actually, no,
has.
You said 750 out of 1,000.
750 out of...
Yeah, you're right. It's almost 1%.
Because 1,000 would be 1%.
Right.
So it's just under 1%. So that goes into this article by Alternet. It says 6 shocking revelations about how private prisons make their money. It starts out by saying, imagine living in a country where prisons are private corporations that profit from keeping their beds stocked at or near capacity, and the governing officials scramble to meet contractual lockup quotas. Imagine that taxpayers would have to pay for any empty beds should crime rates fall below that quota. Surprise! You already live there. This is a new report from the Public Interest reveals basically incarceration is big business now.
Mm-hmm.
They contract with state governments, state and federal governments, to basically run prisons, but they have a contractual minimum occupancy.
Think about this. Why aren't people screaming that we're running out of prisons? People are getting arrested, they're getting convicted, but why are more and more? It's not just because society's gotten out of control to a certain degree. It's also because they're passing laws that make minor offenses that are less and less heinous become susceptible to jail terms.
Well,
minimum sentencing laws and everything.
This is another example of our government who's going to war with its own people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm sorry. I mean, look at. I know this might not sound, it might seem like it's, I don't know, not even the same thing. But think about global warming. What are we told? It's man's fault. Everything you do, including breathing, is destroying the planet. You drive, you're destroying the planet. You breathe, exhale, carbon, CO2. You're killing the planet. You are the enemy, and we're going to tax you for that. That's the same thing. Your government is at war with you.
If you fart.
Oh yeah,
they're going to probably fine you for farting before long.
Cow flatulence.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about a bunch of people that are really anti-human. I can't think of who would write a. I'm going to go into the contractual obligations here in a minute. But what government would sign a contract guaranteeing a certain amount of people? They're going to send a certain amount of people to jail.
And why do you think they every so often in some state they'll all of a sudden come up with this budget shortfall, and they have to cut from the prisons, so they're going to have to let go of some of the lesser, more minor offenders? It's because those people shouldn't be in prison in the first place. A lot of them.
I'm sorry. You, for instance, I don't care how you feel about pot, but come on. Should somebody be serving a life sentence for selling a pound of weed?
No. Or being caught with a joint.
Yeah. Here are the 6 most shocking facts about prison privatization and corporatization from the report. Number 1, 65% of the private prison contracts received and analyzed included occupancy guarantees in the form of quotas or required payments for empty prison cells. It's called a low crime tax. They tax you for not filling your prisons up. These quotas and low crime taxes put taxpayers on the hook for guaranteeing profits for private prison corporations. In other words, if these prisons don't live up to the amount of, if the states don't live up to the amount of prisoners that they contracted, then the citizens are taxed for the shortfall.
Mm-hmm.
How sick is that? Okay.
Real sick.
Number 2, occupancy guarantee clauses in private prison contracts range between 80% and 100%, with 90% as the most frequent occupancy guarantee requirement. Number 3, Arizona, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Virginia are locked-in contracts with the highest occupancy guarantee requirements, with all quotas requiring between 95 and 100% occupancy. That's our state, Scott.
I know.
95 and 100% occupancy. I mean, isn't it the goal of a people, of a state, to try to lessen the amount of people that go to jail? That it's upside down.
I know.
Okay, number 4. Though crime has dropped by 1/3 in the past decade, an occupancy requirement covering 3 for-profit prisons has forced taxpayers in Colorado to pay an additional $2 million for the low crime tax. What? The tax? I mean, the crime has dropped by 1/3, and you're taxing. You're paying a tax on it. I mean, how crazy is that? But all this go back to what Scott was saying about this guy inventing rap to fill the prisons up.
Yep.
Because
and like I said, mandatory sentencing laws, sending people to jail for minor offenses. I'll tell you what. I hate to say this, but I'm starting to agree with a lot of the conspiracy nuts, mainly on the left, over the years, who have said that crack
was
a CIA plot. I'm starting to believe that. Some of the stuff I've been reading.
Yeah, the CIA is guilty of a lot of things.
And I'm starting to. I used to say, they say, well, how come? Black people are only 12% of the population. How come they represent 75% of the inmate population? Because I said because they commit the crimes. Well, I think maybe why they commit the crimes is because of things like the CIA probably introducing crack into the urban neighborhoods.
I couldn't disagree.
I'm starting to agree with some of these conspiracies. I hate to say it.
When your eyes begin to open up, they open up to a whole range of things.
And we're not saying, okay, here's the thing, folks. We're not saying we necessarily believe this stuff, but we're giving it a second look to see where the rabbit hole leads.
Well, the government gives us reason to be conspiratorial. I mean, some of the things that they do, just you scratch your head and say, where'd that come from?
I mean, if you see the rabbit hole and you're given the red pill, you got to see where it ends. And that's what we're kind of doing. That's the best way, I think, to look at what we're doing.
And it gets deeper every day. I mean, every day you find out more and more and more and more. The minute you open your eyes, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. Mm-hmm. So going back to this, what do you think about DUI checkpoints? What do you think that's all about?
I I think it's unconstitutional.
Do you think it's about the safety of the
no. It's
First of all, it's a moneymaker.
It's a moneymaker, just like speed radar was. And you know what? They did away with it in Phoenix because it was ended up costing them more to prosecute all the people that got caught with the radar, photo radar, than it was to get rid of it.
And let me ask you this.
Or to keep it, yeah.
The further and further in we get in with the surveillance state, how many more people you think are going to end up in jail? I mean, when you got a camera, everywhere, just like 1984, especially in your front. I mean, your TVs are looking. Don't think I'm crazy here. Your TVs are even looking at you.
They've been saying that for a while. But I got a question though. Okay, definitely we've got a higher per 100,000 rate of incarceration than Britain does. But as a percentage of their population, what is it? Because they've got more closed-circuit cameras than anyone in the world.
Yes, they do. They're the most heavily surveilled country in the world.
Yeah. I'm just kind of curious. As a percentage of their population, I wonder what it is.
I don't know, but we're vastly beyond China. I mean, China's got, 1.2 or 3 billion people, and they only got
something like that.
1.6 incarcerated. Well, the thing about China is they just execute their people instead of sending them to prison.
No problem. We got 2 billion people here. We can afford it.
So get this. 3 Arizona for-profit prison contracts have a staggering 100% quota, even though a 2012 analysis from the Tucson Citizen shows that the company's per-day charge for each prisoner has increased an average of 13.9% over the life of the contracts. So this is big money. This is big money. And that was 5. Number 6, a 20-year deal to privately operate the Lake Erie Correctional Institute in Ohio includes a 90% quota and has contributed to cutting corners on safety, including overcrowding, areas with secure doors, and an increase in crime both inside the prison and in the surrounding community. So that ties in very nicely to Scott's quote-unquote conspiracy theory about rap music.
And there's another article I started to read on this one page Kevin and I have liked on Facebook that traces. It shows all the intertwining tendrils of this whole thing about rap music and its connections. And I mean, this guy that wrote the article, Kevin's read some of the stuff, and he goes back and forth between left, right, and middle, and whatever. But I mean, he carries some of this stuff all the way back to Hitler and Goebbels and everything. But I will go so far as to say that back during Iran-Contra, we were supplying the Sandinista rebels with arms. The Sandinistas were rebelled against now I hate to say it, the government was communist, but it was duly elected. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to overthrow them, through the CIA. And then this also helped the drug lords down there. They were able to keep business going, and some of those profits were passed on to the CIA, allegedly, according to this guy. Plus, not only that, but it brought more drugs into the U.S. Whether it was an unintended consequence, or if it was by design, we may never know.
I firmly believe we're still in Afghanistan because of drugs.
Yeah.
I mean,
it wouldn't surprise me.
How much more heroin is on the streets in the United States since we began the war in Afghanistan? My friend's son died of a heroin overdose a couple years ago. He's 17 years old. Found him dead in bed one morning.
Aren't there more people using heroin, they say, than marijuana nowadays?
That's a drug of choice for a lot of young kids.
Yep. They sniff it. They don't inject it so much anymore. They smoke it. But if marijuana is a gateway drug, how come it's no longer the number one drug?
Well, this site, Scott, this Facebook site Scott and I belong to, it's really interesting. There's some, by the way, I don't know if you know this, Scott, but there's some fairly, I wouldn't call them famous, but well-known in the alternate media world. Opperman, the Opperman Report on YouTube.
Yep.
Dave Opperman's on that site.
Yep.
The guy who runs it, Dave McGowan, is a writer. He writes all sorts of stuff. One of my favorites is about Laurel Canyon and its ties to rock and roll music. And
isn't that book he was posting about how Something about people weren't buying it or something.
No. It's just that you don't make a lot of money. His brother was
yeah. That's right.
How
that's
little
right.
money you make on it. But anyway, he wrote this interesting article about Laurel Canyon, basically the L.A. connection to rock music, and how a lot of these guys' fathers were military intelligence, and he ties that into a lot of different things. Mind control.
There's no secret. Some of them were. I mean, like, wasn't Jim Morrison's dad military? Wasn't
military intelligence?
Wasn't Jimi Hendrix's? Well, Jimi Hendrix himself was in the
when
service.
he found out I was military intelligence, he wasn't sure if he wanted me to go onto his site because he thought I was one of those guys. But anyway, what I would suggest to all of you, you guys out there who get tired of, screaming at your regular Facebook people to pay attention, and they give 100 likes to a piece of food rather than an important article. If you're tired of that crowd, go find yourself a meaningful page to belong to. I mean, these are really thinking people that not only pay attention to what you post, but post some really interesting things themselves. I mean, there's some of them are writers. This one guy was a survivor of child abuse, and he writes about ritualistic child abuse and murder and so forth, and which is, we could have a whole show on that because it's spooky. But anyway, does the name Britt McHenry mean anything to anybody? I
didn't know what her name was till you told me this morning, but I don't know who she was.
We can file this under the coarsening of American culture. Britt McHenry is a little Barbie figure. She works for ESPN. She's a reporter. She looks like Barbie, and she's all cute and so forth and so on. But she was caught. I guess her car was impounded this week. I don't know what for, maybe a parking violation or what have you. And she was caught on camera berating this woman who was just collecting her money to release her vehicle. And we never saw the woman on the other side of the screen, but she let Britt McHenry know that she was being filmed. And all this woman could do was just personally attack this poor woman about her teeth, her fatness, her lack of education, and how pretty she was, and how, the reason she was where she was because she had a college education and so forth and so on. And I don't know if it's relevant to anything that we're talking about, but things like that just really, really make me angry. And I think a lot of people, whether they be Hollywood, politicians, whoever that are in the spot, I think a lot of them have that in them. I think a lot of them are sociopaths, personally. This person right there is a sociopath. Sorry. She's only
28 almost 29. Ooh, she's from our home state.
She's from
Mount Holly.
Oh, New Jersey?
New Jersey, yeah. Height 5'10". She's that tall.
There's a lot of half of the Fox bimbos on Fox are from New Jersey, by the way.
Yeah. Martha McCallum is.
Yep. What's her name that went to CNN?
Alison Camerata.
Alison Camerata. Did you get to see that wonderful lunch the kids are eating from Michelle Obama's?
What was that?
I'm looking at it right now. It's on a yellow tray, like an egg carton tray made out of cardboard, and there's some really ugly corn and a fish that looks like it still has the scales on it.
Yeah, I was looking at that.
It looks like a rock hard piece of bread. I mean, I bet you my dog wouldn't eat this.
I think the piece of bread was used to kill the fish.
I don't know, but and you realize, Scott, that if you send your kid to school with their own lunch, then they have the ability to look inside your kid's bag lunch and decide if it's healthy enough for the kid to eat. Why are we doing this, America? Why are we giving up our powers like this? Then you wonder why people homeschool their kids. Not only are they giving them this food, but they're also indoctrinating them all day long. They're not teaching them anything. Trust me, I sat in a classroom all week with a bunch of 20-something-year-olds taking a finance course for mortgage finance. And I got to see the results of our public schools up close and personal, and I wasn't too impressed. But But no, they're probably their brains probably haven't been fed the proper food. Judging from this picture of Michelle Obama's.
I just thought of a
lunches.
corollary here. That lunch looks like it lacks taste, for one thing. Think about it. Apply that to society as a whole. This society nowadays lacks taste in many ways.
Decorum.
Well, just taste, period. I'm going somewhere with this. Think about it. In the Bible, here we go. They're getting all biblical and I'm not getting preachy.
We could spend a whole hour on it, but we don't.
What did Jesus say about Christians? You are the salt of the earth. Basically, he said, I think if I recall, he says, if you're gone, it loses flavor.
Yeah. It loses its savor.
It loses its savor. Why do you think the world's like it is, folks? It's because Christians are not doing their job.
They're lukewarm.
They're lukewarm.
And what did Jesus say about?
I will spew you out of my mouth.
Some people say vomit, but
Well, either way,
yeah, you get the point. You get the point. It's like you're either with me or you're not. Don't go halfway. Don't go half in. Go all in.
Proof of that. Another very stark proof of that is what's been happening the last few years. For the most part, it's gotten really out of control down at spring break. I don't know if anyone heard about this story down at Panama City Beach. Earlier this week, there was a young girl who was unconscious. They think she might have had her drink drugged. And she was being gang raped right on the beach within steps. And this was filmed. They showed the video on TV. This was filmed within literally steps of other people who were just lounging around, laughing, giggling, having drinks. No one batted a freaking eye at it. And this young girl was raped. She probably doesn't even remember it. She was unconscious.
Well, not only has the population coarsened, but I'm sorry, but the females have become coarser too. I mean, the things that they tolerate that wouldn't have been tolerated a generation ago.
And let me mention one thing before we continue.
I'm not saying I'm not condoning rape. So
let me continue down before we continue down this path. Let me make a disclaimer. One of my coworkers who listens to this show, we did a show a few weeks ago where we were on this subject, and he basically said it sounded like you hate women. Folks, we don't hate women. We're pointing out some truths about what's happened to women. Women
like
are not
the direction they're going.
You want me to say it? Women are not ladies anymore. There, I said it, to quote Mark Levin. Women are not ladies, and if you don't want to be a lady, guess what? It's no wonder you're still single, because men want women who are ladies.
Okay, I was listening several weeks ago to a group of young women talking about their upcoming pleasure party. That's where women buy and sell, sorry to use this word, vibrators and dildos.
Yep.
And they have whole parties.
And their justification a lot of times is, well, men do it. That doesn't make it right.
What do we do?
Well, I mean, they have their bachelor parties and stuff. Let's say.
But if I think about it, it
doesn't make it right.
It's a whole industry about that's geared around masturbation.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. I mean, I would be ashamed.
Who needs a man?
Can you imagine sitting around with a bunch of guys and talking about that? Yeah,
we wouldn't.
No.
Gloria Steinem. A woman needs a man no more than a fish needs a bicycle.
What? I mean, what? I don't get it. And I found out a lot about women since my divorce. I've dated a little bit, and there's a change. There's a difference out there.
Women are coarser than men nowadays.
Dirtiest jokes.
And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the men are walking around in shock.
Well, either that or playing video games. I don't.
Yeah, and like I said, a lot of you women out there who are moaning and groaning you don't have a mate or husband or a boyfriend, maybe try changing yourself a little bit. And those of you who are married who have a husband, how much do you lord it over him?
Well, I had a Christmas party. It wasn't this last one. It was a year before that. And this one woman...
The last one I DJ'd? Yeah.
Who I didn't know very well. I can't even repeat it.
Oh, that she said over my microphone.
Yes, I can't even repeat it. It's X-rated. And
yeah, I had 2 microphones. She picked up the second microphone without me even telling her you could do it, and said something. And not only was, okay, we're in Kevin's backyard. It was loud enough so the neighbors could hear it. Plus, I was streaming this across the internet. So it was live across the internet for however many people might have been listening.
And it was pornographic. It was, it was something you'd see in a...
And she was a friend of one of the guests. Kevin didn't even know her.
Yeah, and I was just, it's just pointing out the direction, where I see a lot of young ladies going in. There was one, this class I took this last week, who would go at our lunch break and go get drunk. And she would come back to the class all boisterous, and the teacher was passing out the results of an exam, and she F-bombed him several times in front of the, I can't go into detail, but it's like everyone's looking at her and where are you coming from, girl? But anyway.
It's, excuse me, a little bit of indigestion there. It's just, I go back to what Rush said years ago. I think he was quoting a military general or something. Why would women want to give up the best of what it means to be a woman for the worst of what it means to be a man?
Well, the Soviet Union, communism, what communism tries to do, and they're very successful at it, is they try to drive a wedge between men and women, which weakens the family, which it's in communism's best interest to weaken the family so they can control. When you have an individual who's an island, living by themselves with no support group, they're easier to control.
Yep.
And I ran into it firsthand because I dealt with communism during the Cold War. I saw it up close and personal. And typically what ended up happening was the women became married to the state and the men became a bunch of drunks. Mm-hmm. So the women were easily controlled and the men were easily controlled because they had no hope and they were drunk all the time. So,
well, I think it's more control the women and beat down the men.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all you got to do is look at any TV commercial. What do you got? Yeah, I mean, you got to pay attention to this stuff. I've been paying attention to it for the last 30 years. My ex-wife used to think I was crazy, but it's true. Just pay attention to it. Okay, let's say you got a man and a woman the man likes product A and the woman likes product B. All the time, product B is a superior product, and the woman looks smart and the man looks stupid. Well,
another example is, I think it's Toyota, that has that couple that are in all the commercials. The guy is a numbskull, an idiot. One episode, it shows the wife standing in the garage with the garage door open. The car is still in there, and it's raining, pouring. All of a sudden, here comes the husband running with bags of groceries in paper bags. Well, where were you? Well, I just went to do the grocery shopping. Why didn't you drive there? Because I just washed the car, silly. And then the bottom of the bags falls out. You forgot to get the milk. Be right back. So instead of getting in the car, he rushes out to the supermarket again.
Yeah, and there's another one where there's a husband and wife talking, and the husband says, "Well, there's this mortgage company in town that can go, do a refi for blah 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 blah." And he's all excited, and she's going, "But honey," and he keeps going on, "Honey, I've already taken care of it." Like he's just this Dumbo, and if he didn't have her, he couldn't even put his pants on in the morning. That is all designed. I mean,
it's conditioning.
What was the one with Ed? The show Married with Children. That was another perfect example of
Ed O'Neill.
Husband as boob. Mm-hmm. Make the husband look stupid. And that has that has an effect. It's subliminal, yes. And don't, I hate to say this is a Rushism, don't doubt me on this. Mm-hmm. You watch any commercial where a man and a woman each have a separate product. The man never comes up on the winning end, ever.
To be honest, there's only 2 comedies. That's why I like a lot of dramas. You know why? Because one is not put above the other in a lot of the dramas. The type of dramas I watch, they're equals. And we're talking about shows like The Blacklist. Shows like that, they're all equals. But out of the comedies, there's only 2 comedies I watch right now. And that's Big Bang Theory, because it's all about nerds. The female and male nerds are treated equally. And The New Odd Couple. One more has to be said. It's actually pretty good, too, by the way.
And if you don't think TV, whether it be commercials or TV shows, isn't used as a form of social engineering, well, you're mistaken.
Sure it is. Do we need to mention Murphy Brown?
Yeah, single mothers. Well, it ended up being Dan Quayle was correct on that. Dan Quayle, years ago, in the early 1990s, said that it was a shame that we were elevating a single mother, or Murphy Brown, who was a single mother. It's terrible that we were elevating single motherhood to this level. And he caught flack like nothing else. But it turned out that statistics show that that children raised by single parents, not only mothers, single parents don't stand half the chance that a child does with loving mother and father.
And for those of you who don't read and don't know who Dan Quayle is, he was a vice president under George H.W. Bush 43. Or 41.
And another social issue that has been really used by television is homosexuality.
And it's getting to the point where every show has to have at least once or twice during the season, or as a regular, a homosexual couple. It's almost like
they're usually more competent,
they want to go. It's like they want to go out of they're going out of their way to do this.
They're doing it to engineer society.
And we're not saying that all homosexuals should be taken out and killed. They deserve to make a living. They deserve to have freedom and everything like the rest of us. We're just saying we don't agree with the
that's the strong. Of course, no one thinks they should have every right. Everybody else has. However,
we just don't agree with homosexual marriage because it's not marriage.
And any more these days, just calling a homosexual is considered anti-gay or whatever.
Yeah,
homophobic. But I'm a heterosexual. Why is it okay for I'm to describe myself as heterosexual, but I can't call a homosexual.
But I mean, if you want to be in a relationship with someone, that's fine. I do think you should be. If one of you dies, you should be able to leave everything to the other one.
I'm all for that.
But
somehow putting gay marriage on the list of making a civil right is a slap in the face to every black person who marched in Selma in 50 years.
Wasn't one of the pillars of the Communist Manifesto to make the state in charge of marriage?
Yes.
Okay, here's the thing, folks.
We're living under
marriage is not a state thing. Marriage was instituted by God. If you want if you want the state, I just swallowed the wrong way. If you want the state to pass legislation that would enable them to have the benefits of marriage, the civil benefits, and the legal benefits, yeah, I'm all for that. But don't go and call it marriage. Because marriage is a union. It's a spiritual thing. It is not it's not a law thing. It's not a humanistic thing.
And by the way, we always have put limitations on marriage. You can't marry your sister. You can't marry your brother. You can't marry your mother. Can't marry your father. Can't marry your dog. Can't marry your cat.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have more than one wife. There's always been limitations. Mm-hmm. And again, I've said this many times before, but this all happened just so fast. Because if you were to go back in time, for instance, I got 2 ex-girlfriends that I dated when I was really young. And I've told both of them, and they're both in favor of gay. They're not only in favor, but they're just big, huge supporters of. They got the rainbow and the equal sign and all that crap on their car. But anyway,
but and get this through your heads too, folks. There are limits on freedom.
But let me finish what I was saying.
On some freedoms,
and I say to both of them, I say okay to the one I've known since 3rd grade. I won't say her name, but. No, if I had told you on the playground almost 50 years ago, third grade, that one day you would be a huge proponent of two men getting married or two women getting married, what might you have said to me back then? Well, she said, I would have said, yuck, that you were crazy. And I said, well, what is it? Have you matured? Or what's happened? Or have you been manipulated? Tell me, what is it? You know, I mean, you don't change something so drastically on, all of a sudden. We've been nudged. Mm-hmm. Who uses the term nudge?
What's his name? Cass Sunstein.
You nudge people.
I was singing Shel Silverstein.
Again, people wake up and know when you're being manipulated. When you turn on your TV, you're being manipulated. Mm-hmm. You're manipulated all the time. You're being nudged. You're being, when you're in the grocery store, you're being nudged. Just, when the bakery puts bread out, you're, I mean, it's not nefarious or anything, but you're being nudged to, to go.
Because it's all emotional. All things are an emotional thing. Honestly, they really are.
But
to make you feel good about your decisions.
Yeah, but that's how, okay, if you want to get to the nitty-gritty here, what the Russians, what we're seeing here in our country happened a long time ago in the Soviet Union. Things that weaken the family, affecting the relationship, doing things like we were talking about the man and the woman, in the product A and product B. Those are ways that affect the way the sexes interact with one another, which then in turn affects whether or not someone's going to get married, and if they do get married, how that marriage works out. It's attitudes, those things, and the Soviet Union was in their best interest. It was in the communist best interest to have a weak family, and the state runs the kids instead of the parents.
We see that happening. Like I was saying earlier, though, folks, there are limits on freedom. I mean, the biggest limit is if you exercising one of your freedoms gets in the way of someone else trying to exercise one of their freedoms, that's a limit. You can't yell fire in a movie theater.
What does Wilkow says? Your rights end where they begin to infringe on mine, or
right.
Something like. He puts it more eloquently.
Yeah. But I mean, that's true, folks. I mean, there are limits, and you know what? You can't even. I don't even want to go that far, because that's taking the onus off the individual. It should be stated more like, with freedoms come responsibilities.
Now I want to go back and address what your buddy said about us hating women and so forth.
Yeah.
No, what's happened now is you're a prisoner of political correctness. What we're doing is we're doing plain speech here. We're straight talking. Mm-hmm. We're not being filtered through the filter of political correctness. We're just we're saying what we feel and what we think is wrong with this country. And you know what? If you don't like it, sorry. It doesn't mean we hate women. I've got daughters. I was married 20 years. I love my mother. It's ridiculous. You're the guy who's been affected by political correctness.
But this has to be said. It's gotten very difficult to even interact with women.
And by the way, I'm not blaming women for things that are happening beyond their control.
No.
They don't even realize what's happening.
They don't.
Everything you watch, everything you listen to, everything your government tells you.
But unfortunately, it's when you bring this up, people, their eyes glaze over. They say conspiracy, and they say,
okay,
well, that's just the way things are. Well, you know what? The way things are not right.
Try being a man trying in a court trying to get custody of a kid.
Yeah.
Who by default, they're hostile towards a man because that's how the state maintains its power. The woman becomes wed to him, and they become wards of the state. It helps strengthen the state. Heaven forbid a woman should stay with her husband. Granted, if he's abusive, I get all that.
Right.
But
anyway, folks, that's it for this week. I'll tell you what, I was honestly, I didn't know if we'd be able to get through a whole hour with what we had, but it just, once again, it proves you get going on something, it's hard to, the juices start flowing, and you know, I mean, it's not like we do a 3-hour show like, you know, nationally syndicated, you know, talk show hosts do and everything. And that's probably why we're able to do it for 1 hour. You know, it seems to be pretty easy. And I have to say, a lot of time it is. Wouldn't you have to say that?
If I'm sitting having a beer with somebody, I can go on and on
right,
and on.
Right. Well, folks, anyway, but one of these days we'll have phone calls. One of these days we'll have video and everything. I'm in the process of working out it all as I have the time to do so. Anyway, folks, we will see you next week. The same time, same channel. Bye-bye.
God bless.